American gardens have always been places of beauty and bounty, but not all plants are welcome. Some harbor deadly toxins, others harbor addictive compounds, and a few can literally tear apart ecosystems. What seems innocent in a catalog can be devastating in practice. Today, we're exploring 50 plants that face serious restrictions across America and why you need to know about them before you plant. Marijuana. The distinctive serrated leaves of marijuana have become iconic in American culture, but this plant remains in legal limbo. Long before it became associated with counterculture, hemp was actually a staple crop in early America. George Washington himself grew it at Mount Vernon for rope and textile production. Today, marijuana faces a complex patchwork of laws. While federally classified as a Schedule I controlled substance, state laws vary dramatically. In Idaho, Wyoming, and South Carolina, growing even a single plant can result in felony charges with prison sentences. The plant contains THC, tetrahydrocannabinol, the psychoactive compound that produces a high, which remains the primary reason for its restricted status. For gardeners, the legal risks simply aren't worth it in states where it's prohibited. Even in states with legal recreational use, strict limits on plant numbers and licensing requirements make casual growing complicated. If you're interested in the ornamental qualities of cannabis, consider Japanese maple or cleome as legal alternatives with similar distinctive leaf patterns. Coca Plant. The coca plant might look unassuming with its oval leaves and small white flowers, but this South American native carries a powerful legacy. For thousands of years, indigenous Andean peoples chewed coca leaves to combat altitude sickness and boost energy while working in the thin mountain air. However, when scientists isolated cocaine from coca leaves in the 1800s, everything changed. Today, the coca plant is federally prohibited throughout the United States under the Controlled Substances Act. Even possessing a single plant can result in serious federal charges, regardless of your intentions. What makes this prohibition absolute is the plant's singular connection to cocaine production. Unlike some other restricted plants that have multiple uses, authorities view coca cultivation through one lens only. For gardeners interested in South American flora, consider yerba mate as a legal alternative. It provides a natural energy boost through caffeine rather than cocaine alkaloids. Water spinach. Water spinach might seem like an innocent vegetable, but this Asian green hides a troubling secret beneath its tender leaves and hollow stems. Also called kangkong or water morning glory, it's a staple in many Southeast Asian cuisines, prized for its mild flavor and nutritional value. The problem isn't toxicity, but tenacity. When water spinach escapes cultivation, it forms dense mats across water surfaces, choking out native vegetation and disrupting aquatic ecosystems. Its rapid growth rate, up to 4 inches daily, makes it nearly impossible to control once established. In Florida, Texas, California, and Hawaii, it's strictly prohibited due to the threat it poses to delicate wetland ecosystems. For those craving its culinary properties, regular spinach or New Zealand spinach provides similar nutritional benefits without the ecological risks. If you're specifically looking for an Asian green, bok choy and gai lan are excellent alternatives that won't land you in trouble with agricultural authorities. Kudzu. Kudzu tells a cautionary tale about good intentions gone terribly wrong. In the 1930s, the USDA actually paid farmers to plant this Asian vine as a solution for soil erosion. The glossy, three-lobed leaves and sweet-smelling purple flowers seemed perfect for stabilizing barren hillsides across the South. Nobody predicted what would happen next. Kudzu grew with unstoppable vigor, up to a foot per day in summer heat. It smothered entire forests, swallowed abandoned buildings, and earned the nickname, the vine that ate the South. A single root crown can extend vines over 100 feet in all directions, making control nearly impossible once established. Today, kudzu is prohibited in Pennsylvania, Oregon, Washington, and heavily restricted throughout the Southeast. The economic damage from this plant exceeds $500 million annually in lost forest productivity and control costs. For gardeners seeking fast-growing vines, consider native alternatives like Virginia creeper or American wisteria, which provide similar coverage without the invasive tendencies. Salvia Divinorum. Salvia Divinorum might look like an ordinary member of the sage family with its square stems and opposite leaves, but this Mexican native is anything but common. Indigenous Mazatec shamans have used it for centuries in healing rituals, valuing its powerful but short-lived hallucinogenic effects. The plant contains salvinorin A, one of the most potent naturally occurring hallucinogens known to science. Unlike many psychoactive compounds, it works on kappa opioid receptors rather than serotonin receptors, creating a unique and intense experience that some find profoundly disturbing. This potential for misuse has led to bans in Florida, Michigan, Ohio, Wisconsin, and several other states. Even in states where it's not explicitly banned, growing it could potentially violate federal analog drug laws. For gardeners interested in ornamental sages, dozens of beautiful and completely legal salvia species exist, including the popular culinary sage and the striking blue-flowered Salvia guaranitica. Callery Pear. The Callery Pear represents one of the most dramatic falls from grace in American landscaping history. For decades, varieties like Bradford were the darlings of suburban developments. Fast-growing trees with perfect pyramidal shapes, cloud-like spring blooms, and brilliant fall color. But beneath that beauty lurked a monster. The trees proved structurally weak, often splitting apart after just 15 to 20 years. Worse, they began escaping into natural areas, forming impenetrable thickets that crowded out native vegetation. Their shallow root systems damaged sidewalks and foundations, while their spring flowers emitted an unpleasant fishy odor. Ohio, Pennsylvania, and South Carolina have now banned the sale and cultivation of Callery pears, with more states following suit. Existing trees aren't illegal to maintain, but their days are numbered in American landscapes. For gardeners seeking similar aesthetic qualities, serviceberry, Amelanchier, offers beautiful spring flowers, fall color, and edible berries without the invasive tendencies. Peyote Cactus. The Peyote Cactus appears deceptively simple, a small blue-green button lacking the dramatic spines of its desert relatives. Yet this unassuming plant has played a profound role in Native American spiritual traditions for over 5,000 years, particularly among the Huichol and Navajo peoples. The cactus contains mescaline, a powerful hallucinogen that produces vivid visual effects and altered states of consciousness. Under the Controlled Substances Act, peyote is federally prohibited for general cultivation. However, a narrow religious exemption exists for members of the Native American Church, recognizing the plant's sacred status in indigenous traditions. This exemption doesn't extend to home gardeners or collectors, regardless of intent. For cactus enthusiasts, many similar-looking species like Lopophora williamsii, var. Cespitosa, or Ariocarpus fissuratus provide the same distinctive button-like appearance without legal complications. These living rock cacti offer the same ornamental appeal while keeping you on the right side of federal law. Floating water chestnut. The floating water chestnut might seem charming with its diamond-shaped leaves arranged in perfect rosettes on pond surfaces. European nobility once prized its nutritious nuts, even cultivating it in castle moats during the Middle Ages. But in American waterways, this aquatic plant has become an ecological nightmare. When introduced to fresh water, water chestnut forms dense mats that block sunlight from reaching native underwater plants. Each plant can produce up to 300 nuts annually, each capable of remaining viable in sediment for up to 12 years. The sharp, barbed nuts wash ashore, making beaches unusable and puncturing boat tires and swimmers' feet. New York, Massachusetts, Vermont, and Connecticut have prohibited this invasive species, with removal efforts costing millions annually. For water gardeners seeking floating plants, native alternatives like American lotus or water lily provide similar aesthetic appeal without the ecological damage. The lesson of water chestnut reminds us that even plants with historical value can become destructive when moved to new environments. Datura, or Jimsonweed. Datura has walked a fine line between ornamental beauty and deadly danger throughout American history. Its trumpet-shaped white flowers unfurl dramatically at dusk, releasing a sweet, intoxicating fragrance that has tempted gardeners for generations. Early settlers encountered it growing wild, giving it the name Jamestown weed, later shortened to Jimsonweed, after soldiers were poisoned by it at Jamestown, Virginia in 1676. Every part of this plant contains dangerous tropane alkaloids, atropine, scopolamine, and hyoscyamine that affect the central nervous system. Even small amounts can cause hallucinations, delirium, and death. Children are particularly vulnerable, attracted by the spiny, interesting seed pods. While not universally illegal, Datura is restricted in many municipalities, especially near schools and public areas. Some states monitor its cultivation due to its potential for abuse as a hallucinogen. For gardeners attracted to its night-blooming qualities, consider moonflower or night-blooming jasmine as safer alternatives with similar nocturnal beauty. Caulerpa Seaweed. Caulerpa taxifolia earned the ominous nickname killer algae for good reason. This bright green seaweed was originally developed for aquariums, prized for its attractive feathery fronds and hardiness. But when it escaped into natural waters, ecological disaster followed. Unlike most seaweeds, this genetically modified strain can survive out of water for days, spreads through tiny fragments, and grows on virtually any surface. It releases toxins that deter fish and other marine grazers, allowing it to spread unchecked. A single square inch can grow into a 75-square-foot carpet within 6 months. After devastating the Mediterranean coast, Caulerpa appeared in California in 2000, triggering a $7 million emergency eradication program. It's now federally prohibited, with particularly strict monitoring in coastal states. For aquarium enthusiasts, numerous native seaweeds provide similar aesthetic appeal without the ecological risks. This case demonstrates how even modified ornamental species can become devastating when they escape controlled environments. Opium Poppy. The Opium Poppy stands as perhaps the most controversial beauty in garden history. Its tissue paper petals in shades of pink, purple, and white have captivated gardeners for centuries. The distinctive seed pods that follow the flowers were once common ornaments in dried arrangements. What makes this poppy problematic is the milky latex contained in those unripe seed pods. This substance contains morphine, codeine, and other opiates, the same compounds used to produce heroin. Under the Controlled Substances Act, growing opium poppies with knowledge of their narcotic capabilities is federally illegal throughout the United States. The legal gray area comes from intent. The same poppies are the source of culinary poppy seeds used on bagels and in baking. For gardeners, the risk isn't worth it. Many equally beautiful poppies exist without legal complications, including the Oriental poppy and California poppy, both of which provide similar dramatic blooms without containing controlled substances. Wavyleaf Basketgrass. Wavyleaf Basketgrass represents a newer threat to American forests. First discovered in Maryland in 1996, this Asian grass initially seemed like just another woodland plant with its distinctive wavy-edged leaves. But its innocent appearance masked a formidable invader. The grass spreads rapidly across forest floors, forming dense carpets that prevent tree seedlings and native wildflowers from growing. What makes it particularly problematic is its sticky seeds, which adhere to clothing, animal fur, and equipment, allowing it to hitchhike into pristine areas. A single plant can produce thousands of seeds annually. Maryland, Virginia, and Pennsylvania have prohibited this species as it threatens the ecological health of eastern deciduous forests. For gardeners seeking ornamental grasses for shaded areas, native alternatives like river oats or bottlebrush grass provide similar aesthetic appeal without the invasive tendencies. This relatively recent arrival demonstrates how vigilance against new invasive species remains crucial. Betel Nut Palm. The betel nut palm presents itself as an elegant tropical tree with a slender trunk and graceful fronds that evoke images of paradise. Throughout Southeast Asia, the Pacific Islands, and parts of India, chewing betel nut wrapped in leaves has been a cultural tradition for thousands of years, valued for its mild stimulant effects. However, science has revealed the darker side of this practice. Regular betel nut use is strongly linked to oral cancers, dental disease, and other health problems. The World Health Organization classifies it as a carcinogen, and the FDA restricts its import for human consumption. While not explicitly illegal to grow in most states, the palm's cultivation is monitored, and importing seeds or plants requires special permits. The palm itself struggles in most American climates outside Hawaii and southern Florida. For gardeners seeking tropical aesthetics, consider the Christmas palm or bottle palm as legal alternatives that provide similar ornamental value without health concerns. Medusahead. Medusahead might not look particularly threatening with its slender stems and bristly seed heads, but this Mediterranean annual grass has transformed millions of acres of western rangeland into ecological wastelands. Named for its resemblance to the snake-haired Gorgon of Greek mythology, its effects on American landscapes are equally monstrous. The grass produces silica-rich tissues that break down slowly, creating a thick thatch layer that prevents other plants from establishing. Its barbed seeds injure livestock and wildlife, while its low nutritional value makes it unpalatable to grazing animals. Once established, it increases wildfire frequency, further damaging native ecosystems. Colorado, Nevada, Oregon, and Utah have prohibited Medusahead, with millions spent annually on control efforts. For gardeners interested in ornamental grasses, numerous native alternatives exist, including blue grama and prairie dropseed, which provide similar visual interest without ecological damage. This case illustrates how even seemingly ordinary grasses can become extraordinary problems when introduced to new environments. Hydrilla. Hydrilla earned the nickname the perfect aquatic weed for its remarkable ability to transform water bodies into impenetrable mats of vegetation. Originally sold as an aquarium plant in the 1950s, it escaped into Florida waterways and began an unstoppable march across American lakes and rivers. What makes Hydrilla so problematic is its adaptability. It can grow in various water conditions from a few inches to 20 feet deep. It reproduces through fragments, tubers, seeds, and turions, winter buds, making control nearly impossible once established. A single plant fragment can start a new infestation, and tubers can remain viable in sediment for years. Florida, Texas, California, and Washington have prohibited Hydrilla, with control costs exceeding $100 million annually. For water gardeners, native alternatives like eelgrass or coontail provide similar underwater structure for fish habitat without the invasive tendencies. Hydrilla serves as a stark reminder that aquatic invasives can be among the most difficult to control once established. Camelthorn. Camelthorn might appear innocuous with its small leaves and delicate purple flowers, but this Middle Eastern native harbors a tenacity that has earned it serious restrictions. Originally introduced to the American Southwest in the early 1900s, possibly as a contaminant in alfalfa seed, it quickly revealed its invasive nature. What makes camelthorn particularly problematic is its root system, which can extend more than 30 feet deep and spread laterally over 40 feet. These roots can penetrate asphalt, concrete, and agricultural drainage systems. The plant also produces thousands of seeds annually, each remaining viable in soil for years. Its thorny stems make it unpalatable to livestock and difficult for humans to remove. Arizona, California, Colorado, and Nevada have prohibited camelthorn, with ongoing eradication efforts costing millions. For gardeners seeking drought-tolerant legumes, consider native alternatives like false indigo or desert senna, which provide similar ecological benefits without the invasive tendencies. Camelthorn demonstrates how plants adapted to harsh desert conditions often become particularly problematic invaders, as the very traits that help them survive in difficult environments make them difficult to control. Khat. Khat presents itself as an unassuming evergreen shrub with glossy leaves that could easily blend into any landscape. For centuries across the Horn of Africa and Arabian Peninsula, chewing fresh khat leaves has been a social tradition, valued for the mild stimulant effect produced by the compound cathinone. However, this seemingly innocent plant carries serious legal consequences in America. The DEA classifies cathinone as a Schedule I controlled substance, the same category as heroin and LSD. Khat is federally illegal throughout the United States, with possession or cultivation carrying potential prison sentences. The plant itself requires tropical or subtropical conditions, making outdoor cultivation impossible in most of the country. However, even attempting to grow it in greenhouses or as a houseplant violates federal law. For gardeners interested in evergreen shrubs with similar appearance, consider boxwood or holly varieties, which provide year-round structure without legal complications. Khat illustrates how cultural practices accepted in one region can conflict with legal frameworks in another. Skunk Vine. Skunk Vine earned its unpleasant name honestly. When crushed or cut, the leaves emit a distinctive odor, reminiscent of rotting eggs or sewage, a characteristic that hasn't deterred its aggressive spread through the southeastern United States since its introduction in the early 1900s. This East Asian vine grows rapidly, climbing over native vegetation and forming dense mats that block sunlight and eventually kill host plants. A single plant can spread over 60 feet in multiple directions. Birds readily disperse its berries, allowing it to jump from managed landscapes into natural areas. Florida has prohibited skunk vine, with ongoing control efforts in natural areas costing millions annually. For gardeners seeking vining plants, numerous native alternatives exist, including trumpet honeysuckle or crossvine, which provide similar growth habits and wildlife benefits without invasive tendencies. Skunk vine demonstrates how even plants with objectionable characteristics can become established and spread when introduced to environments lacking natural controls. Monk's Hood, or Wolf's Bane. Monk's Hood stands as one of the most dramatically beautiful and deadly plants ever cultivated in gardens. Its deep blue-purple flowers, shaped like the cowls worn by medieval monks, have captivated gardeners for centuries. In Victorian gardens, it was prized for its shade tolerance and architectural presence. What makes this plant so dangerous is aconitine, a potent neurotoxin present in all parts of the plant. Even handling the leaves without gloves can cause numbness and tingling as the toxin absorbs through skin. Ingestion of even small amounts can cause heart arrhythmias and death. There are documented cases of gardeners dying after mistaking the roots for horseradish. While not universally illegal, monk's hood is restricted in some municipalities, especially near schools and public areas. Some states monitor its cultivation due to its extreme toxicity. For gardeners attracted to its dramatic flowers, delphinium or blue columbine provides similar aesthetic appeal with far less risk. If you do grow monk's hood, treat it with extreme caution, always wear gloves, and never plant it where children or pets have access. Common Crupina. Common Crupina might not have the name recognition of Kudzu or purple loosestrife, but this Mediterranean annual has earned its place on the federal noxious weed list through its devastating impact on western rangelands. With its slender stems and small purple thistle-like flowers, it might seem unremarkable at first glance. What makes Crupina so problematic is its ability to form dense stands that exclude native vegetation and reduce forage for livestock and wildlife. Each plant produces up to 40 seeds with distinctive bristles that attach to animal fur, clothing, and equipment, allowing rapid spread. The seeds remain viable in soil for at least 3 years, making control challenging once established. Idaho, Oregon, and Washington have prohibited Crupina, with ongoing eradication efforts. For gardeners interested in similar-looking plants, native alternatives like Blazing Star provide comparable purple flowers without invasive tendencies. Common Crupina illustrates how even relatively obscure plants can become significant ecological threats when introduced to compatible environments lacking natural controls. Poison hemlock. Poison hemlock stands as perhaps history's most infamous plant, forever linked to the death of Socrates in 399 BCE. This European native can reach 8 to 10 feet tall, with delicate white flowers arranged in umbrella-like clusters and distinctive purple-spotted stems that help distinguish it from similar-looking edible plants. Every part contains deadly alkaloids, primarily coniine, that cause respiratory paralysis when ingested. As little as 6 to 8 leaves can be fatal to an adult, with no effective antidote once consumed. Children are particularly vulnerable, as they might mistake the roots for wild carrots or the seeds for anise. While not universally illegal to grow, poison hemlock is listed as a noxious weed in Washington, Oregon, Nevada, and Montana, requiring mandatory removal. For gardeners attracted to its lacy white flowers, Queen Anne's lace or astilbe provides similar aesthetic appeal without the deadly risks. If you discover poison hemlock on your property, wear protective clothing during removal and never burn it, as the smoke can contain toxic compounds. Air potato. Air potato might sound like an oddity from a fantasy garden, but this aggressive vine has created real-world nightmares across the southeastern United States. Named for the potato-like aerial tubers that form along its stems, this Asian yam relative was introduced to Florida in the early 1900s, likely as a potential food crop. The vine grows with astonishing speed, up to 8 inches per day, allowing it to quickly smother native vegetation. Each aerial tuber can produce a new plant, and a single vine can produce hundreds annually. These tubers drop to the ground in winter, sprouting new vines the following spring and making control extremely difficult. Florida, Alabama, and Georgia have prohibited air potato, with biological control programs using specialized beetles showing recent promise. For gardeners seeking vining plants, native alternatives like American wisteria or trumpet creeper provide similar vertical interest without invasive tendencies. Air potato demonstrates how even plants introduced with good intentions can become ecological disasters when they escape cultivation. Iboga. Iboga presents itself as an unassuming shrub with small green leaves that could easily blend into any tropical garden. Native to Central Africa, particularly Gabon and Cameroon, it has been used in traditional Bwiti spiritual ceremonies for centuries. The root bark contains ibogaine, a powerful psychoactive compound that produces intense visionary states. In recent decades, ibogaine has gained attention for its potential in treating opioid addiction, with some studies showing it can reduce withdrawal symptoms and cravings. However, it also carries serious risks, including potentially fatal heart arrhythmias when used improperly. The DEA classifies ibogaine as a Schedule I controlled substance, making iboga federally illegal to cultivate throughout the United States. Even research with the compound requires special permits. For gardeners interested in tropical shrubs, numerous legal alternatives exist, including varieties of Ixora or Gardenia, which provide similar structure and flowering without legal complications. Iboga illustrates the complex intersection between traditional plant medicines, modern therapeutic potential, and regulatory frameworks. Old World Climbing Fern. Old World Climbing Fern might sound like something from a fantasy novel, but its impact on Florida's ecosystems has been all too real. Unlike typical ferns that grow as compact plants, this Asian species produces vine-like fronds that can climb more than 90 feet into tree canopies, forming dense mats that smother entire forests. What makes this fern particularly problematic is its reproductive strategy. It produces millions of lightweight spores that can travel miles on wind currents, allowing it to jump between isolated natural areas. Once established, it changes fire patterns, turning ground fires into canopy fires that kill mature trees. A single plant can cover acres within a few years. Florida has prohibited Old World Climbing Fern, with control efforts costing millions annually. For gardeners seeking interesting ferns, numerous native alternatives exist, including cinnamon fern or royal fern, which provide similar tropical aesthetics without invasive tendencies. This case demonstrates how even plants from typically safe groups like ferns can become devastating invaders in new environments. Japanese knotweed. Japanese knotweed might be the closest thing to a plant supervillain that exists in the gardening world. This Asian native was introduced to America in the late 1800s as an ornamental, prized for its bamboo-like stems, heart-shaped leaves, and clouds of white flowers. Victorian gardeners planted it enthusiastically, unaware of the monster they were unleashing. What makes knotweed truly terrifying is its virtually indestructible nature. The roots can penetrate asphalt, concrete foundations, and drainage systems. They extend up to 10 feet deep and 65 feet horizontally. Even a pea-sized fragment can regenerate into a new plant. In the UK, homes have been declared unmortgageable due to knotweed infestations, and property values can drop by 10 to 20%. New York, Pennsylvania, Washington, Oregon, and Michigan have prohibited Japanese knotweed, with control efforts costing millions annually. For gardeners seeking similar aesthetics, consider native alternatives like goat's beard or false Solomon's seal, which provide comparable visual impact without the destructive tendencies. Knotweed serves as perhaps the starkest warning about introducing non-native species without understanding their potential impacts. San Pedro Cactus. San Pedro Cactus presents a fascinating legal gray area in American gardens. This columnar cactus from the Andes has been cultivated for over 3,000 years, playing a role in traditional healing ceremonies among indigenous peoples of Peru, Ecuador, and Bolivia. With its bluish-green color and relatively few spines, it's an attractive ornamental for desert landscapes. The complexity arises from the cactus containing mescaline, the same psychoactive compound found in peyote. However, unlike peyote, San Pedro is not specifically named in the Controlled Substances Act. Growing it purely as an ornamental plant is generally legal, but extracting or using the mescaline is federally prohibited. This creates a situation where the plant itself isn't illegal, but its misuse is. For gardeners, it's important to understand this distinction. If you choose to grow San Pedro, do so purely for its ornamental qualities. Many equally attractive columnar cacti exist without these legal complications, including the similar-looking Peruvian apple cactus or organ pipe cactus. Giant hogweed. Giant hogweed looks like something from a prehistoric world, with towering stems reaching 15 feet tall and umbrella-shaped flower clusters spanning 2 to 3 feet across. Victorian gardeners prized it as a dramatic specimen plant, introducing it from the Caucasus Mountains to gardens across Europe and North America. What makes this plant so dangerous is its sap, which contains photosensitizing compounds that remove the skin's protection against ultraviolet light. Contact followed by sun exposure causes severe burns, blistering, and permanent scarring. Eye contact can lead to blindness. The reaction can persist for years, with affected skin remaining sensitive to sunlight. New York, Pennsylvania, Michigan, and Washington have prohibited giant hogweed, with mandatory eradication programs in place. For gardeners seeking dramatic tall plants, native alternatives like angelica or Joe Pye weed provide similar architectural presence without the health risks. Giant hogweed demonstrates how even the most impressive ornamentals can pose serious public health threats when their biological properties aren't fully understood. Witchweed. Witchweed might be the most economically devastating plant you've never heard of. This parasitic plant attaches to the roots of grasses, particularly corn, sorghum, and sugarcane, stealing nutrients and water while releasing toxins that stunt growth. Affected crops often show no above-ground symptoms until it's too late, with yield losses reaching 100% in severe infestations. What makes witchweed particularly insidious is its reproductive capacity. A single plant can produce up to 500,000 microscopic seeds that remain viable in soil for over 20 years. These seeds only germinate in response to chemical signals from host plants, allowing them to lie dormant until ideal conditions arise. Witchweed is federally listed as a noxious weed, with quarantines in place in North and South Carolina following its discovery there in the 1950s. A decades-long eradication program has cost millions but prevented its spread to the Corn Belt, where damages could reach billions annually. For gardeners, vigilance is key. Immediately report any suspicious parasitic plants on grasses to agricultural authorities, as early detection remains crucial to preventing wider establishment. Oleander. Oleander embodies the paradox of beauty and danger that runs through garden history. With its glossy evergreen leaves and clusters of pink, white, or red flowers, it became a landscape staple across the American South and West during the mid-20th century. Its drought tolerance and salt resistance made it particularly popular for highway medians and coastal properties. What makes oleander problematic is its extreme toxicity. Every part contains cardiac glycosides that disrupt heart rhythm and can cause death. A single leaf can be fatal to a child, and smoke from burning oleander contains toxic compounds that can cause respiratory damage. There are documented cases of people dying after using oleander stems as cooking skewers. While not universally illegal, oleander is restricted in some municipalities, especially near schools and public areas. Some states have removed it from public landscapes due to liability concerns. For gardeners seeking similar evergreen flowering shrubs, consider native alternatives like Texas sage or California lilac, which provide comparable beauty without the deadly risks. Morning Glory. Morning Glory presents one of the more nuanced cases in garden restrictions. These climbing vines with heart-shaped leaves and trumpet-shaped flowers in shades of blue, purple, and white have adorned American gardens for generations. Children delight in watching the blooms open with the morning sun and close by afternoon. The complexity arises from certain species, particularly Hawaiian baby woodrose and heavenly blue, containing lysergic acid-amide, LSA, a compound chemically similar to LSD. The seeds contain the highest concentration, which has led to misuse as a legal hallucinogen. Growing morning glories as ornamental plants remains legal throughout the United States. However, cultivating them specifically for drug extraction violates federal law. For gardeners, common varieties like Grandpa Ott's or Heavenly Blue make beautiful additions to the landscape when grown purely for their ornamental qualities. If you're concerned about potential misuse, numerous other vining plants like clematis or honeysuckle provide similar vertical interest without these complications. Garlic mustard. Garlic mustard tells a story of how even humble-looking plants can transform entire ecosystems. This European biennial arrived with early settlers, possibly as a culinary and medicinal herb. With its heart-shaped leaves and small white flowers, it seemed harmless enough in kitchen gardens. What makes garlic mustard so problematic is its chemical warfare strategy. The plant releases compounds that suppress mycorrhizal fungi in the soil, the same fungi that most native forest plants depend on for nutrient uptake. This creates a dead zone where native wildflowers and tree seedlings struggle to survive while garlic mustard thrives. Garlic mustard is listed as a noxious weed in many northeastern and midwestern states, with mandatory control requirements in some areas. A single plant can produce thousands of seeds that remain viable in soil for up to 5 years. For gardeners seeking early-season greens, native alternatives like wild ginger or toothwort provide similar culinary possibilities without ecological damage. Garlic mustard demonstrates how even plants introduced for practical purposes can become ecological disruptors when they escape cultivation. Goat's rue. Goat's rue might be the perfect example of good intentions gone terribly wrong. This European legume was introduced to Utah in 1891 as a potential forage crop for livestock. With its compound leaves and clusters of purple flowers, it resembled alfalfa and seemed promising for agricultural use. The first warning sign came when animals refused to eat it. Scientists later discovered goat's rue contains galagine, a compound toxic to sheep, cattle, and other livestock. By then, it had already escaped cultivation. Each plant produces thousands of seeds that remain viable in soil for up to 10 years, allowing it to form dense stands that exclude native vegetation and agricultural crops. Goat's rue is federally listed as a noxious weed with particularly strict prohibitions in Utah, Colorado, and Washington. A decades-long eradication program in Utah has cost millions but prevented its wider establishment. For gardeners seeking similar-looking flowering legumes, consider native alternatives like wild indigo or lupine, which provide comparable beauty and nitrogen-fixing benefits without invasive tendencies. Castor bean plant. The castor bean plant embodies the dual nature of many problematic garden plants, stunning beauty paired with deadly potential. With its tropical-looking palmate leaves in burgundy or green and distinctive spiny red seed pods, it brings dramatic architectural presence to gardens. Victorian landscapers prized it as a centerpiece in formal beds. What makes castor bean so concerning is ricin, one of the most potent plant toxins known to science. A single seed, if chewed and swallowed, can kill a child. The toxin works by preventing cells from synthesizing proteins, leading to organ failure and death. There is no effective antidote once symptoms appear. While not universally illegal, castor bean is restricted in some municipalities, especially near schools and public areas. Some states monitor its cultivation due to both toxicity concerns and its potential use in bioterrorism. For gardeners seeking similar tropical aesthetics, consider alternatives like red-leaved hibiscus or canna lilies, which provide comparable dramatic foliage without the deadly risks. Serrated Tussock. Serrated Tussock represents the quiet devastation that can come from seemingly ordinary grasses. This South American native appears unremarkable, a perennial bunchgrass with fine, wiry leaves forming rounded tussocks. Yet its impact on agricultural lands and natural areas has been anything but ordinary. What makes serrated tussock so problematic is its unpalatability to livestock, combined with its aggressive growth. The high fiber and low protein content make it worthless as forage, yet it readily outcompetes valuable pasture species. A single plant can produce over 140,000 seeds annually, which can travel up to 10 miles on wind currents. Once established, it's extremely difficult to eradicate. California, Colorado, and Massachusetts have prohibited serrated tussock, with ongoing control efforts costing millions annually. For gardeners seeking ornamental grasses, numerous native alternatives exist, including little bluestem or prairie dropseed, which provide similar textural interest without invasive tendencies. This case demonstrates how even ordinary-looking plants can cause extraordinary economic damage. Ayahuasca Vine. The ayahuasca vine represents one of the more complex intersections of traditional plant use, religious freedom, and controlled substance laws in America. This South American woody liana has been used for centuries in indigenous spiritual ceremonies, particularly in the Amazon basin. When brewed with other plants containing DMT, it produces a powerful psychoactive tea. The vine itself contains harmala alkaloids that act as monoamine oxidase inhibitors, MAOIs, which allow DMT from companion plants to become orally active. Under the Controlled Substances Act, DMT is a Schedule I substance, making ayahuasca preparations federally controlled. However, the legal status of the vine alone remains somewhat ambiguous. Religious exemptions exist for certain recognized churches that use ayahuasca sacramentally, similar to the Native American church's peyote exemption. For gardeners, the tropical nature of the vine makes outdoor cultivation impossible in most of the United States. Those interested in South American vines might consider passion flower species, which provide similar tropical character without legal complications. Mile-a-minute weed. Mile-a-minute weed earned its name honestly. This Asian annual vine can grow up to 6 inches per day, quickly smothering trees, shrubs, and native vegetation under a blanket of triangular leaves and curved barbs that allow it to climb virtually any surface. The distinctive circular leaf structures that surround the stem, ochreae, make it easily identifiable. What makes mile-a-minute particularly problematic is its reproductive strategy. Birds readily eat and disperse the metallic blue berries, allowing it to jump between isolated natural areas. Each plant can produce thousands of seeds that remain viable in soil for up to 6 years. Even small fragments can root and form new plants when conditions are favorable. New York, Pennsylvania, Ohio, and Delaware have prohibited mile a minute, with ongoing control efforts in natural areas. For gardeners seeking vining plants, numerous native alternatives exist, including Virgin's Bower or trumpet honeysuckle, which provides similar growth habits without invasive tendencies. This case demonstrates how fast-growing annual vines can become particularly problematic invaders. Foxglove. Foxglove stands as one of the most paradoxical plants in garden history, simultaneously a beloved cottage garden staple and one of the most dangerous plants commonly grown. Its tall spires of tubular flowers in shades of purple, pink, and white have captivated gardeners for centuries, while its distinctive spotted throat markings inspired the folk name fairy thimbles. What makes foxglove both valuable and dangerous is its cardiac glycosides, particularly digoxin and digitoxin. These compounds have saved countless lives as heart medications, regulating heart rhythm and increasing cardiac output. However, in uncontrolled doses, they cause nausea, vomiting, hallucinations, and potentially fatal heart arrhythmias. All parts of the plant are toxic, with the leaves containing the highest concentration. While not illegal to grow, foxglove should be approached with caution, especially in gardens where children or pets have access. Some municipalities restrict it in public plantings. For gardeners seeking similar vertical flower spikes, consider safer alternatives like Blazing Star or Speedwell, which provide comparable visual impact without the toxic risks. Tropical soda apple. Tropical soda apple might sound refreshing, but this South American nightshade has brought nothing but trouble to the southeastern United States since its accidental introduction in the 1980s. With spiny stems and leaves, white flowers, and golf ball-sized fruits that turn yellow when ripe, it's a distinctive but unwelcome addition to the landscape. What makes tropical soda apple particularly problematic is its impact on agricultural lands. Cattle avoid the spiny plants, leading to overgrazing of desirable forage species and eventual pasture degradation. Wildlife and livestock eat the fruits and disperse the seeds through manure, allowing rapid spread. Each plant can produce up to 50,000 seeds annually, with seeds remaining viable in soil for years. Florida, Georgia, and Alabama have prohibited tropical soda apple, with mandatory control requirements for landowners. For gardeners seeking interesting solanum species, consider non-invasive ornamental eggplants or the native eastern horse nettle, which provides similar wildlife benefits without invasive tendencies. This case demonstrates how agricultural weeds can rapidly transform from localized problems to regional crises. White snakeroot. White snakeroot carries one of the most fascinating and tragic histories of any American plant. This native perennial, with its clusters of small white flowers and serrated leaves, was responsible for thousands of deaths throughout the 19th century, including Abraham Lincoln's mother, Nancy Hanks Lincoln. The plant contains trematol, a complex alcohol that causes milk sickness when cows graze on it and pass the toxin through their milk. Symptoms include trembling, vomiting, delirium, and often death. Before the connection was discovered, milk sickness killed thousands of settlers across the Midwest and Appalachia, particularly affecting women and children who consumed more dairy products. While not illegal to grow, white snakeroot is monitored in agricultural areas, especially in the Midwest. Modern milk processing and dairy regulations have virtually eliminated milk sickness, but the plant remains toxic to livestock and humans. For gardeners seeking native white flowers, alternatives like boneset or whitewood aster provide similar aesthetic appeal without the toxic risks. Multiflora Rose. Multiflora Rose represents one of the most dramatic reversals in agricultural history, from government-promoted solution to legally prohibited invasive. This Asian shrub rose, with its arching canes covered in clusters of small white flowers, was actively planted across America from the 1930s to the 1960s for erosion control, living fences, and wildlife habitat. What makes Multiflora Rose so problematic is its aggressive reproduction and adaptability. Each plant can produce up to 500,000 seeds annually, which remain viable in soil for up to 20 years. Birds disperse the bright red hips, spreading the plant into natural areas. It also reproduces vegetatively when arching canes touch the ground and root. The curved thorns make removal difficult and painful. Connecticut, Massachusetts, New Hampshire, and West Virginia have prohibited Multiflora Rose, with ongoing control efforts costing millions annually. For gardeners seeking similar functions, native alternatives like Virginia Rose or Carolina Rose provide comparable wildlife benefits without invasive tendencies. This case demonstrates how even government-promoted plants can become ecological nightmares when their biology isn't fully understood. Kratom. Kratom occupies an increasingly controversial position in American plant regulations. This tropical tree from Southeast Asia has been used traditionally for centuries, with workers chewing the leaves for energy and pain relief. The leaves contain mitragynine and 7-hydroxymitragynine, compounds that interact with opioid receptors in the brain. In recent years, kratom has gained popularity as an alternative treatment for pain and opioid withdrawal. However, concerns about its potential for dependence, side effects, and inconsistent potency have led to restrictions in several states. The FDA has not approved kratom for any medical use and has issued warnings about its safety. Alabama, Arkansas, Indiana, Wisconsin, Vermont, and Rhode Island have banned kratom outright, while other states have implemented age restrictions or specific regulations. The tropical nature of the tree makes outdoor cultivation impossible in most of the United States. For gardeners interested in medicinal plants, numerous legal herbs with established safety profiles exist, including valerian, chamomile, and lemon balm, which can be grown without legal concerns. Autumn olive. Autumn olive tells a familiar story of good intentions leading to ecological disaster. This Asian shrub was widely promoted for conservation plantings from the 1950s through the 1980s. With silvery leaves, fragrant spring flowers, and abundant red berries, it seemed perfect for wildlife habitat, windbreaks, and reclaiming disturbed lands. What makes autumn olive so problematic is its exceptional adaptability and reproductive capacity. It fixes nitrogen in poor soils, giving it a competitive advantage over native plants. Birds eagerly consume the berries, dispersing seeds across the landscape. A single mature shrub can produce up to 200,000 seeds annually, which remain viable in soil for several years. Connecticut, Massachusetts, New Hampshire, and Wisconsin have prohibited autumn olive, with ongoing control efforts in natural areas costing millions annually. For gardeners seeking similar functions, native alternatives like serviceberry or American cranberry bush viburnum provide comparable wildlife benefits without invasive tendencies. This case demonstrates how even plants promoted for conservation can become conservation threats when introduced outside their native range. Rosary Pea. Rosary Pea might be the most beautiful deadly plant you've never heard of. This tropical vine produces distinctive seeds with a glossy scarlet coat and a single black spot resembling tiny ladybugs. These seeds have been used for centuries in jewelry, rosaries, and musical instruments, prized for their uniform size and striking appearance. What makes Rosary Pea so dangerous is abrine, a toxin even more potent than ricin. A single seed, if the hard coat is broken and the contents ingested, contains enough toxin to kill an adult. The toxin works by preventing cells from synthesizing proteins, leading to organ failure and death. There is no effective antidote once symptoms appear. While not universally illegal, Rosary Pea is listed as a noxious weed in Florida, and its cultivation is monitored federally. The tropical nature of the vine makes outdoor cultivation impossible in most of the United States. For gardeners seeking interesting seeds for crafts, consider safer alternatives like Job's tears or native coral bean, which provide similar ornamental qualities without the deadly risks. Eurasian water milfoil. Eurasian water milfoil represents one of the most costly aquatic invasives in American history. This feathery submerged plant was likely introduced through the aquarium trade in the 1940s, valued for its delicate appearance and oxygen-producing capabilities in fish tanks. What makes water milfoil so problematic is its growth strategy and reproductive capacity. It forms dense mats that shade out native aquatic plants, deplete oxygen levels, and impede water flow. Unlike many aquatic plants that require seeds for reproduction, water milfoil spreads primarily through fragmentation. Even tiny pieces broken off by boats, fishing gear, or water currents can root and form new plants. Michigan, Minnesota, Wisconsin, and Washington have prohibited Eurasian water milfoil, with control costs exceeding $500 million nationally. For water gardeners, native alternatives like coontail or northern water milfoil provide similar underwater structure without invasive tendencies. This case demonstrates how aquatic invasives can be particularly difficult to control once established, making prevention crucial. Ephedra. Ephedra represents one of the more complex regulatory cases in American plant history. This scrubby desert shrub from Asia, also known as mahuang, has been used in traditional Chinese medicine for over 5,000 years to treat asthma, congestion, and other respiratory conditions. It contains ephedrine and pseudoephedrine, compounds that stimulate the central nervous system. In the 1990s, ephedra became popular in weight loss and energy supplements. However, concerns about cardiovascular side effects, including strokes, heart attacks, and deaths, led the FDA to ban ephedra-containing dietary supplements in 2004. This ban doesn't apply to traditional Chinese herbal remedies or the plant itself, creating a regulatory gray area. While growing ephedra isn't universally illegal, its cultivation for ephedrine extraction is federally monitored due to pseudoephedrine's use in methamphetamine production. For gardeners interested in medicinal herbs, numerous safer alternatives with established safety profiles exist, including echinacea, elderberry, and thyme, which can be grown without regulatory concerns. Brazilian pepper tree. Brazilian pepper tree embodies the deceptive beauty that characterizes many invasive plants. With glossy evergreen leaves, clusters of small white flowers, and bright red berries, it was introduced to Florida in the 1840s as an ornamental. Its Christmas-like appearance, with red berries against dark green foliage, made it particularly popular for holiday decorations. What makes Brazilian pepper tree so problematic is its aggressive growth and allelopathic properties. It releases chemicals that inhibit the growth of competing vegetation. A single female tree can produce up to 100,000 berries annually, each containing 1 to 3 seeds. Birds eagerly consume the berries, dispersing seeds across the landscape. The plant also causes severe allergic reactions in many people, similar to its relative poison ivy. Florida and Texas have prohibited Brazilian pepper tree, with ongoing control efforts costing millions annually. In Florida alone, it has invaded over 700,000 acres of natural areas. For gardeners seeking evergreen trees with red berries, native alternatives like American holly or Yaupon holly provide similar ornamental qualities without invasive tendencies. This case demonstrates how plants introduced purely for aesthetic reasons can become ecological nightmares when their biology isn't fully understood. Tree of Heaven. Tree of Heaven carries perhaps the most ironic name in botanical history. This fast-growing Asian tree was introduced to Philadelphia in 1784 as an ornamental and became popular in urban areas for its ability to thrive in poor conditions. By the mid-19th century, it was widely planted along city streets and in gardens across America. What makes Tree of Heaven so problematic is its combination of aggressive growth, allelopathic properties, and structural issues. It releases chemicals that inhibit the growth of competing vegetation, produces up to 350,000 wind-dispersed seeds annually, and sprouts vigorously from roots when cut down. The brittle wood breaks easily in storms, creating hazards and property damage. Massachusetts, Vermont, New Hampshire, and Pennsylvania have prohibited Tree of Heaven, with restrictions increasing as it's recognized as the preferred host for spotted lanternfly, an invasive insect threatening agricultural crops. For gardeners seeking fast-growing shade trees, native alternatives like hackberry or sweet gum provide similar functions without invasive tendencies. This case demonstrates how even long-established ornamentals can become newly problematic when they host emerging pest species. Giant reed. Giant reed presents itself as a dramatic ornamental grass reaching heights of 20 feet or more with bamboo-like stems and plume-like flower heads. Introduced from the Mediterranean region, it was planted for erosion control, windbreaks, and as a potential biofuel crop. Its hollow stems have been used for centuries to make musical instruments, particularly woodwind reeds. What makes giant reed so problematic is its aggressive growth in riparian areas. It forms dense monocultures that displace native vegetation, alter stream flow, increase fire risk, and reduce wildlife habitat. Unlike true bamboos, which spread primarily through rhizomes, giant reed reproduces through fragments that wash downstream during floods, allowing rapid colonization of new areas. California, Texas, and Nevada have prohibited giant reed with ongoing control efforts costing millions annually. For gardeners seeking tall ornamental grasses, native alternatives like switchgrass or eastern gamagrass provide similar vertical interest without invasive tendencies. This case demonstrates how plants introduced for practical purposes can become ecological disruptors when they escape cultivation. Purple loosestrife. Purple loosestrife represents one of the most visually stunning yet ecologically devastating plants in American wetlands. This European perennial produces tall spikes of magenta flowers that bloom for months, creating spectacular displays that once captivated gardeners and landscapers. It was widely planted throughout the 19th and early 20th centuries for its ornamental value and supposed medicinal properties. What makes purple loosestrife so problematic is its reproductive capacity and competitive advantage in wetlands. A single plant can produce up to 2.7 million seeds annually, each the size of ground pepper and capable of remaining viable in soil for years. Once established, it forms dense stands that displace native wetland plants, reducing habitat for waterfowl and other wildlife. Most northern states, including Wisconsin, Minnesota, and Illinois, have prohibited purple loosestrife with biological control using specialized beetles, showing promise in recent decades. For gardeners seeking similar flowering spikes, native alternatives like blazing star or blue vervain provide comparable visual impact without ecological damage. This case demonstrates how even plants valued for their beauty can become ecological nightmares when introduced to compatible environments. Water hyacinth. Water hyacinth might be the perfect embodiment of deceptive beauty in the plant world. This floating aquatic plant, with its glossy rounded leaves, inflated petioles, and stunning lavender blue flowers, was introduced to the United States at the 1884 World's Fair in New Orleans. Visitors were captivated by its exotic appearance and took specimens home for water gardens across the country. What makes water hyacinth so problematic is its explosive growth rate. Under ideal conditions, it can double its population in just 12 days. The plants form dense mats that block sunlight, deplete oxygen, impede water flow, and prevent boat navigation. A single acre of water hyacinth can weigh up to 200 tons and contain millions of plants, each capable of producing thousands of seeds that remain viable for years. Florida, Texas, Louisiana, and California have prohibited water hyacinth, with control costs exceeding $100 million annually. For water gardeners seeking floating plants, native alternatives like American frogbit or water snowflake provide similar aesthetic appeal without invasive tendencies. This case demonstrates how even the most beautiful ornamentals can become ecological and economic disasters when introduced to environments lacking natural controls. These 50 plants remind us that beauty can hide danger and good intentions can lead to ecological disaster. The responsible gardener researches before planting, understanding that our choices impact ecosystems far beyond our own backyards. Which of these plants surprised you most? Let us know in the comments below, and don't forget to like and subscribe for more gardening wisdom.